cold evening wind swept through the crowded streets of Lagos, carrying dust, smoke, and the smell of roasted corn from nearby roadside stalls. Cars honked endlessly while street traders shouted over one another, trying desperately to make their final sales before nightfall. Underneath the old Aja Bridge, hidden from the bright city lights and expensive buildings, 25-year-old Amara sat quietly on a flattened cardboard box. She pulled her faded sweater tighter around herself as the Harmattan breeze bit into her dark skin. Her stomach growled painfully, reminding her she had not eaten since morning. But hunger was something she had already learned to live with. Around her, other homeless people prepared for another difficult night. Some spread torn blankets on the cold ground while others searched through nylon bags for leftover food. A little boy nearby cried softly from hunger while his mother tried to comfort him. Amara looked away, her chest tightening painfully. She reached into her small cloth bag and removed the only thing she had left: half a loaf of bread wrapped carefully inside old newspaper. It was supposed to be her dinner. Slowly, she stood up and walked toward the crying child. "Take this," she said gently, handing the bread to the surprised woman. The woman stared at her. "But this is your food." Amara forced a small smile. "I'm not very hungry." That was a lie. The woman's eyes filled with gratitude. "God bless you." Amara simply nodded before returning quietly to her corner beneath the bridge. She leaned against the concrete pillar and closed her eyes for a moment, trying to ignore the emptiness in her stomach. Life had not always been this cruel. There was once a time when she had laughed freely. A time when she had a home, family, love. Tears gathered painfully in her eyes as memories returned once again. She remembered her mother singing while cooking dinner in their small village house. She remembered her father carrying her on his shoulders through the farm fields while she laughed endlessly. Back then, life had felt safe, perfect, until the accident. Amara still remembered the terrible day villagers came rushing toward their house with frightened faces. A truck had lost control on the highway. Her parents never made it home alive. Everything changed after that. At first, relatives pretended to care for her. They comforted her during the funeral and promised to protect her. But only weeks later, their true intentions appeared. Her uncle seized her parents' land. Her aunt called her a burden. They sold nearly everything her parents owned and kept the money for themselves. When Amara turned 18, her uncle finally threw her out completely. "You are old enough to survive on your own," he had said coldly. She begged them not to send her away, but nobody cared. With only a small bag of clothes and a few coins, she traveled to Lagos hoping life would improve. Instead, things became worse. At first, she worked as a cleaner in a restaurant. But after the owner died, his son fired several workers, including her. Then she found work washing clothes for wealthy families. But the pay was too small to survive. Soon she could no longer afford rent. The landlord threw her belongings outside without mercy. That was how she ended up under the bridge. 3 years. 3 whole years of surviving on the streets. 3 years of insults, hunger, humiliation, and loneliness. Yet somehow, she still remained kind. Many people wondered why. Even Amara herself did not fully understand it. Maybe because she knew exactly how painful cruelty felt. A loud thunderclap suddenly shook the sky. Amara looked upward immediately. Dark clouds had gathered heavily above the city. Rain. The homeless people beneath the bridge began rushing around nervously, trying to protect their few belongings before the storm started. Within minutes, heavy rain poured violently across Lagos. Water splashed onto the roads while traders hurriedly packed their goods. Amara moved farther beneath the bridge, hugging herself tightly against the cold. Then she noticed someone. Across the busy road, an elderly woman stood alone near the sidewalk. The woman looked completely lost. She wore an elegant cream-colored outfit and expensive jewelry that glittered even beneath the stormy sky. Her gray hair was damp from the rain, and she looked frightened as cars sped dangerously past her. People brushed by without stopping. Some glanced at her briefly before continuing on their way. Amara frowned deeply. Something was wrong. The old woman looked confused, almost disoriented. and she was trembling badly. Without thinking twice, Amara immediately stood up and crossed the road carefully through the rain. "Ma'am," she called out. The elderly woman turned slowly, her eyes filled with worry. "Oh, thank goodness," the woman whispered weakly. "Please, can you help me?" Amara stepped closer. "Are you all right?" The woman looked around anxiously. "I can't find my driver. I don't know where he went." Rainwater dripped down her face while thunder echoed again. "Do you have a phone?" Amara asked. "My battery died." The woman looked embarrassed. "I think I wandered too far from the event center." Amara immediately noticed how weak she looked. The woman's hands were shaking from cold. "Come with me," Amara said gently. "You shouldn't stay in the rain." The woman hesitated briefly. Most wealthy people avoided homeless strangers. But something about Amara's calm eyes felt trustworthy. Slowly, she nodded. Amara carefully guided her across the road toward a closed shop with a small overhead shelter. The rain continued pouring heavily around them. "You're soaked," Amara murmured. Without hesitation, she removed her own faded scarf and wrapped it around the older woman's shoulders. The woman looked shocked. "No, dear, you need this more than I do." "I'll be okay," Amara replied softly. The woman stared at her quietly. Up close, Amara looked exhausted. Her clothes were old and worn out. Her slippers were nearly broken. Yet despite clearly struggling herself, she was still helping someone else. "What is your name?" the woman asked after a moment. "Amara." "That's beautiful." Amara smiled faintly. "Thank you." "And you?" The woman adjusted the scarf carefully around herself. "My name is Evelyn." For a while, they sat silently listening to the rain hit the roof loudly. Then Amara noticed Evelyn rubbing her hands together from cold. "Wait here," she said suddenly. Before Evelyn could stop her, Amara ran into the rain toward a nearby food stall that was still open. A few minutes later, she returned holding 2 small plastic cups of hot tea. Evelyn blinked in surprise. "You bought this for me?" Amara nodded. "But child," Evelyn looked confused. "You're soaked." "It's fine." Evelyn accepted the tea slowly. The warmth immediately relaxed her body. "You shouldn't have spent your money on me," she said softly. Amara shrugged lightly. "You looked cold." Evelyn studied her carefully. In her 65 years of life, she had met countless people. Politicians, businessmen, socialites, even charity workers who helped others mainly for publicity. But this young woman expected absolutely nothing in return. There was no greed in her eyes, no hidden motive, only kindness, and that touched Evelyn deeply. "What do you do for work?" Evelyn asked. Amara hesitated. Then she smiled sadly. "I don't really have work anymore." Evelyn slowly began to understand. "You live nearby?" Amara looked away quietly. The silence answered everything. Evelyn's chest tightened painfully. "You're homeless." Amara forced herself to nod. For a moment, Evelyn could not speak. This girl had nothing, absolutely nothing. Yet she had spent her last money buying tea for a stranger. Before Evelyn could say another word, several black luxury SUVs suddenly appeared on the road. They stopped sharply near the sidewalk. Doors opened immediately as security guards rushed out frantically. "Madam Evelyn." "Thank God. Where have you been?" Evelyn sighed tiredly. "I'm all right." Then a tall man stepped out from the last vehicle. The moment he appeared, the entire atmosphere changed. He was strikingly handsome, dressed in a perfectly tailored dark suit despite the rain. His sharp jawline, commanding presence, and cold, intense eyes made him impossible to ignore. Amara recognized him instantly. Almost everyone in Nigeria knew his face. Adrian Cole, 30 years old, billionaire CEO of Cole Enterprises, one of the richest and most powerful businessmen in the country. His expression was filled with worry as he approached quickly. "Mother," he said firmly, "do you know how worried I've been?" "I'm sorry," Evelyn replied softly. "I wandered away." Adrian exhaled heavily before noticing the soaked scarf around his mother's shoulders. Then his gaze shifted toward Amara. For a moment, Neither of them spoke. Adrian's eyes moved slowly over her appearance. The worn clothes, the trembling hands, the tired eyes. Yet, despite looking exhausted herself, she stood protectively beside his mother. "Who is she?" Adrian asked quietly. Evelyn immediately smiled. "This young woman helped me." One of the guards quickly added, "We searched everywhere for you, ma'am. If not for her," Evelyn continued, "I would still be stranded in the rain." Adrian looked surprised. "She stayed with you this whole time?" "Yes," Evelyn said warmly. "She even bought tea for me with her own money." Adrian's eyes flickered with disbelief. Amara suddenly felt uncomfortable beneath his intense gaze. "It wasn't a big deal," she murmured quietly. But to Adrian it was a very big deal. People usually approached wealthy families for favors, opportunities, or money. Yet this homeless girl had helped his mother without knowing who she was. That alone shocked him. Rain continued falling around them as silence stretched briefly between them. Then Adrian noticed something else. Amara was shivering badly from cold. Without hesitation, he removed his expensive coat and stepped toward her. Amara's eyes widened immediately. "You're freezing," Adrian said simply as he draped the coat gently around her shoulders. The warmth stunned her. No one had cared about her comfort in years. "You don't have to. You'll get sick," he interrupted calmly. Amara looked down speechlessly at the expensive coat now covering her worn clothes. Evelyn watched the interaction quietly with growing interest. Her son rarely showed concern for strangers, especially not women. Yet there was something different in the way he looked at Amara. Something curious, something soft. Adrian reached into his pocket and removed a business card. He handed it toward her. "Come to this address tomorrow morning." Amara blinked in confusion as she stared at the elegant black card. "Why?" "I'd like to repay your kindness." "You don't owe me anything." "That may be true," Adrian replied calmly, "but I still want to help." Amara looked uncertain. People had disappointed her too many times before. Evelyn gently touched her hand. "Please come." Something in the older woman's voice felt sincere. After a long hesitation, Amara nodded slowly. "Okay." Adrian gave a small nod in return. Then one of the guards opened an umbrella over Evelyn. As they prepared to leave, Evelyn turned back once more. "Thank you, Amara." Amara smiled faintly. "You're welcome." The convoy finally drove away into the rainy night. And suddenly, everything became quiet again. Amara stood motionless beneath the shelter, Adrian's expensive coat still wrapped around her shoulders. For the first time in years, a strange feeling entered her heart. Hope. The rain continued falling long after the black convoy disappeared into the distance. Amara remained standing beneath the small shop shelter, Adrian's expensive coat wrapped tightly around her trembling body. The material felt soft and warm against her cold skin, so different from the rough clothes she had worn for years. She looked down at the black business card still resting in her hand. Adrian Cole, CEO, Cole Enterprises. Even the card itself looked expensive. Amara swallowed nervously. Part of her believed the entire encounter had been a dream. People like Adrian Cole did not notice women like her. Men like him lived in worlds completely separate from hers. Worlds filled with luxury cars, glass skyscrapers, bodyguards, and endless wealth. While she slept under bridges. Slowly, she sat back down on her cardboard box beneath the bridge, staring quietly at the card while the city lights flickered around her. Nearby, an elderly homeless man named Baba Tund leaned closer curiously. "You know that man?" he asked. Amara shook her head quickly. "No. But those cars." The old man whistled softly. "That man must be powerful." Amara gave a weak smile. "I think he owns one of the biggest companies in Lagos." Baba Tun's eyes widened instantly. "And he gave you his coat?" Amara looked down at it again. The coat probably cost more than everything she owned combined. A strange, uncomfortable feeling settled in her chest. Why had Adrian helped her? Wealthy people usually ignored homeless women. At best, they offered pity. At worst, disgust. But Adrian had looked at her differently. Not with mockery, not with arrogance. Almost like he was trying to understand her. The thought made her uneasy. She folded the business card carefully and placed it inside her small bag before lying down on the cardboard. But sleep refused to come. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Adrian's face again. His calm, deep voice, his sharp, dark eyes, the warmth of his coat around her shoulders. Amara sighed softly and turned over. Tomorrow morning, she would have to decide whether to visit Cole Enterprises or forget the entire thing completely. And honestly, she was terrified. The next morning, Lagos awakened noisily as usual. Cars filled the roads before sunrise while traders arranged goods outside crowded shops. Amara sat near a public tap behind the market, carefully washing her face with cold water. She had barely slept. The business card remained tightly clutched in her hand all night. "You should go." One of the homeless women encouraged her while braiding her daughter's hair nearby. Amara looked uncertain. "What if they laugh at me?" "They won't. You don't know that." The woman smiled gently. "Maybe this is your miracle." Amara looked away quietly. Miracles were for lucky people. Still, something deep inside her urged her to try. By 8 o'clock that morning, Amara finally gathered enough courage to head toward Victoria Island, where Cole Enterprises was located. The farther she walked, the more uncomfortable she became. Luxury stores lined the streets. Expensive cars drove past constantly. Everything around her screamed wealth. She felt painfully out of place in her faded clothes and worn slippers. When she finally stood before the massive Cole Enterprises building, her breath caught in her throat. The glass skyscraper towered high above the city like something from another world. Workers in expensive suits entered through the revolving doors while security guards stood outside professionally. Amara immediately considered turning around. There was no way someone like her belonged there. But then she remembered Evelyn's kind smile. "Please come." Taking a shaky breath, Amara slowly approached the entrance. Almost immediately, one of the guards frowned. "Can I help you?" Amara nervously held out the business card. Mr. Adrian asked me to come." The guard glanced at the card, then at her appearance. Suspicion crossed his face briefly. But the moment he saw Adrian's personal signature at the bottom, his expression changed instantly. "One moment." He quickly spoke into his earpiece. Amara stood awkwardly while workers entering the building stared at her curiously. Some whispered quietly to one another. "She looks homeless. Why is she here? She must be lost." Amara lowered her eyes in embarrassment. A few minutes later, the guard suddenly straightened respectfully. "You may go inside, ma'am." "Ma'am." The word alone shocked her. Slowly, Amara stepped into the luxurious lobby. The cool air conditioning immediately hit her skin. Everything inside gleamed beautifully. Marble floors, crystal lights, expensive furniture, enormous flower arrangements. Felt unreal. Amara became painfully aware of her old clothes again. She clutched her small bag tightly while trying not to stare too much at everything around her. Then suddenly, the entire lobby grew quieter. Employees began looking toward the elevators. Amara turned slowly, and her heart nearly stopped. Adrian Cole himself was walking toward her. He wore a perfectly fitted charcoal suit with a silver watch on his wrist. His calm, confident steps immediately commanded attention throughout the lobby. Several executives followed behind him, nervously discussing documents. But the moment Adrian saw Amara, he stopped listening to them completely. His eyes focused only on her. The executives looked confused as Adrian suddenly walked away from them and headed directly toward the poorly dressed young woman standing near the entrance. "Good morning," Adrian said calmly once he reached her. Amara swallowed nervously. "Good morning. You came." Something about the slight warmth in his voice surprised her. "I wasn't sure if I should." Adrian noticed her discomfort instantly. The entire lobby was staring openly now. Without hesitation, he turned toward the executives behind him. "We'll continue the meeting later." "Yes, sir," they replied quickly. The moment Adrian dismissed them, shocked whispers spread quietly through the building. Amara felt even more uncomfortable. "Come with me," Adrian said gently. Before she could protest, he personally escorted her toward the private elevator. The employees nearly fainted from disbelief. Their cold billionaire CEO was personally accompanying a homeless-looking girl upstairs. Inside the elevator, silence filled the air briefly. Amara kept her eyes lowered nervously. Adrian studied her quietly. In daylight, he noticed details he missed the previous night. She looked exhausted, far too thin. There were dark circles beneath her eyes that hinted at years of hardship. Yet despite everything, there was still softness in her expression, still kindness. "You didn't sleep much," Adrian observed. Amara looked surprised. "How did you know?" "You look tired." She gave a small, awkward laugh. "I'm not used to places like this." Adrian's expression softened slightly. "You don't need to be nervous." Easy for him to say. The elevator doors opened into the executive floor. Employees immediately stood straighter when Adrian walked past. Amara followed behind him carefully, feeling dozens of curious eyes watching her. Finally, Adrian opened the doors to his office. Amara froze instantly. The office was enormous. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city skyline, while elegant black furniture decorated the room beautifully. Everything looked sophisticated and expensive. "You can sit," Adrian said. Amara perched nervously on the edge of the couch. Adrian removed his suit jacket calmly before loosening his tie slightly. For some reason, seeing the powerful billionaire look more relaxed made him seem less intimidating. "Have you eaten this morning?" he asked suddenly. Amara hesitated. That alone gave him his answer. Without another word, Adrian pressed a button on his desk phone. "Bring breakfast to my office." "Yes, sir." Amara quickly shook her head. "You don't have to do that." "I know. But you're hungry." Her cheeks burned with embarrassment. A few minutes later, staff members entered carrying trays of food. Fresh bread, eggs, fruit, tea. Amara stared silently at the meal after they left. It looked like enough food for 3 people. Adrian noticed the hesitation in her eyes. "You can eat." Slowly, Amara reached for the bread. At first, she tried eating politely, but hunger quickly took over. Adrian watched quietly as she ate. Not greedily, not carelessly, just like someone who had gone too long without proper meals. "When was the last time you ate something decent?" he asked softly. Amara paused. "I don't remember." Something painful tightened inside Adrian's chest. For years, newspapers called him ruthless in business, cold-hearted, emotionless. Yet somehow this girl's quiet honesty affected him deeply. After she finished eating, Amara looked embarrassed again. "I'm sorry." "For what?" "I probably ate too much." Adrian stared at her for a moment before shaking his head slowly. No one should ever apologize for being hungry. The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. For a while, silence settled comfortably between them. Then Adrian leaned slightly forward. "My mother likes you very much." Amara smiled faintly. "She's kind. She spoke about you all night." Amara blinked in surprise. "She did. She said you stayed beside her in the rain even though you had nowhere to sleep yourself." Amara looked down quietly. "I just didn't want her to be alone." Adrian continued watching her carefully. Most people would have used the situation to beg for money or favors after discovering Evelyn was wealthy. But Amara had asked for nothing. That alone fascinated him. "What happened to you?" Adrian asked gently. Amara looked startled. "You don't have to answer if you don't want to." For several seconds, she remained silent. Then slowly, she told him everything. Her parents, the accident, her relatives stealing everything, the years of struggling alone in Lagos, losing her room, sleeping under the bridge. Adrian listened quietly without interrupting. The more she spoke, the angrier he became internally. How could someone endure so much hardship and still remain gentle? Most people would have become bitter, cruel, but not Amara. When she finally finished speaking, the office fell silent again. Adrian leaned back slowly in his chair. Then he asked the question she least expected. "Would you like a job?" Amara blinked rapidly. A job?" "Yes." She stared at him in disbelief. You barely know me. My instincts about people are usually correct. Amara looked overwhelmed. I don't even have qualifications. I'm not hiring you for qualifications. Then why? Adrian's gaze held her steadily. Because I think you deserve a chance. Her throat tightened painfully. Nobody had spoken to her that way in years. Before she could respond, Adrian continued. There's a position available in the company cafe. It's simple work, but the pay is good. Amara's eyes widened instantly. And Adrian paused briefly. I've arranged temporary accommodation for you. She froze completely. Accommodation? You mean a room? A small apartment. Amara's eyes filled with tears before she could stop them. For 3 years she had dreamed of sleeping in a real bed again. A real room. Safety. Warmth. Privacy. And now this man was offering all of it so casually. I don't know how to thank you, she whispered shakily. Adrian held her gaze quietly. You already thanked me. How? You helped my mother when nobody else stopped. Tears slipped softly down Amara's cheeks. She quickly wiped them away, embarrassed. But Adrian didn't look uncomfortable. Instead, he handed her a box of tissues calmly. You don't have to cry. A weak laugh escaped her through the tears. I think I forgot what kindness feels like. For the first time in a very long while, Adrian's chest ached unexpectedly. And deep down, although he did not fully realize it yet, the billionaire CEO had already begun falling for the homeless girl with the gentle heart. Amara stood frozen in the middle of the small apartment, hardly believing it was real. The room was simple but beautiful. There was a soft gray couch near the window, a clean kitchen with shining counters, cream-colored curtains, and a bedroom with a neatly made bed that looked softer than anything she had touched in years. A real bed. Not cardboard. Not cold concrete beneath a bridge. A real bed. Tears gathered slowly in her eyes as she walked carefully through the apartment, almost afraid she might wake up from a dream at any moment. One of Adrian's female staff members, Mrs. Daniels, stood beside her with a warm smile. If you need anything, just let us know, the older woman said kindly. Amara nodded quickly. Thank you so much. Mrs. Daniels placed a shopping bag on the table. There are a few clothes inside for work tomorrow. Amara's eyes widened. You bought clothes for me too? Mrs. Daniels chuckled softly. Mr. Cole instructed us personally. That statement alone made Amara's chest tighten strangely. Adrian. Even after everything he had already done, he was still thinking about her comfort. After Mrs. Daniels left, Amara slowly opened the shopping bag. Inside were neatly folded clothes, shoes, toiletries, and even pajamas. Fresh tears rolled down her cheeks. Nobody had cared whether she owned clean clothes in years. That night, Amara took her first warm shower in a very long time. The hot water touched her skin while steam filled the bathroom, and suddenly the pain she had buried for years came crashing down all at once. She leaned against the tiled wall and cried quietly, not from sadness, but from relief. Relief that, for once, she was safe. When she finally lay on the bed later that night, she could barely sleep. The mattress felt too soft, too comfortable. She kept expecting someone to chase her away, but nobody came. For the first time in years, Amara fell asleep without fear. The next morning, sunlight streamed gently through the curtains. Amara opened her eyes slowly and sat up in confusion before remembering where she was. The apartment. Her apartment. A smile spread across her face before she could stop it. After getting dressed in the new clothes provided for her, a simple cream blouse and black trousers, she stared nervously at herself in the mirror. She almost looked like a completely different person. Still nervous, she headed toward Cole Enterprises. This time, the guards greeted her respectfully the moment she arrived. Good morning, Miss Amara. Miss, the word still sounded strange to her. Inside the building, employees glanced curiously at her as she walked through the lobby. Some recognized her from yesterday. Whispers immediately followed. That's the girl. The one the CEO personally escorted upstairs. She's prettier today. Amara tried ignoring them as she followed directions toward the company cafe. The cafe itself was elegant and modern, filled with polished tables and large windows overlooking the city. The manager, a strict-looking woman named Clara, approached her immediately. "You're the new employee?" "Yes, ma'am." Clara looked her over briefly. "You'll help with serving customers and keeping things organized." Amara nodded quickly. "I'll do my best." "You better," Clara replied sharply before walking away. Amara immediately got to work. Despite her nervousness, she moved quickly and carefully, cleaning tables, arranging pastries, and greeting customers politely. Soon, something surprising happened. People started smiling back at her. "Good morning." "Thank you. Can I get another coffee, please?" Amara treated everyone kindly regardless of their position. Executives, cleaners, interns, security guards. Everyone received the same warm smile from her. By lunchtime, several employees had already begun noticing her. "She's very polite. And hardworking too. She doesn't behave proud at all." Even Clara silently admitted Amara worked far better than most new employees. Around noon, Amara carried a tray of coffee carefully between tables when the entire cafe suddenly became quieter. Employees immediately straightened in their seats. Amara turned slightly. Adrian had entered the cafe. He wore a navy blue suit today, his sleeves rolled slightly upward while he checked something on his phone. The atmosphere shifted instantly the moment he walked in. Power seemed to follow him naturally. Amara lowered her eyes quickly and focused on the tray in her hands. But before she could walk away, Adrian looked up. Their eyes met immediately, and unexpectedly, his expression softened. "Good afternoon," he said calmly. Amara blinked in surprise. Good afternoon, sir." Several employees exchanged shocked glances. Their CEO barely greeted anyone casually. Yet here he was speaking gently to the new cafe worker. Adrian stepped closer. "How's your first day?" Amara nodded nervously. "Good. You slept well." The concern in his voice caught her off guard again. "Yes," she replied softly. "Very well." For a brief second, satisfaction crossed Adrian's face. "Good." Then Clara hurried over nervously. "Sir, would you like your usual coffee?" Adrian glanced briefly at the menu despite clearly knowing it already. "I'll take whatever Amara recommends." The cafe nearly fell silent. Amara looked stunned. "Me?" Adrian nodded calmly. "You work here now. I trust your recommendation." Her heart began beating strangely fast. After a moment, she quietly prepared a caramel latte and handed it to him carefully. "Thank you," Adrian said. Their fingers brushed briefly during the exchange. A small spark shot unexpectedly through Amara's chest. She quickly looked away. Adrian noticed, and for some reason, it amused him slightly. After he left, the cafe immediately exploded with whispers. "Oh my God! Did you see that? The CEO never comes down here personally. Who exactly is this girl?" Amara pretended not to hear them while her cheeks burned with embarrassment. Over the next few weeks, Amara settled slowly into her new life. For the first time in years, she had stability. A bed, food, safety. And although adjusting wasn't easy, she worked harder than anyone else because she never wanted to lose it. Every morning, she arrived early. Every evening, she stayed late helping clean. Soon, employees began specifically visiting the cafe during her shifts. Not just because she was beautiful, but because she made people feel comfortable. She remembered names, asked about their families, smiled sincerely. Even workers having difficult days often left feeling lighter after speaking with her. One afternoon, Amara noticed an exhausted cleaner struggling to carry heavy cleaning supplies alone. Without hesitation, she rushed over. "Let me help you." The older cleaner looked surprised. No, it's fine." But Amara had already taken half the supplies from her arms. "You shouldn't carry all this alone." The cleaner smiled gratefully. "Thank you." Unbeknownst to Amara, Adrian had just entered the cafe upstairs balcony overlooking the lower floor. He paused immediately upon seeing her helping the cleaner. Most employees ignored the cleaning staff entirely, but Amara treated them with the same kindness she showed everyone else. Adrian leaned quietly against the railing, watching her laugh softly at something the cleaner said. Something unfamiliar stirred inside him again. Peace. It was strange. Board meetings stressed him. Business negotiations bored him. Luxury parties irritated him. Yet somehow watching Amara smile while helping someone made his entire day feel lighter. "Sir." Adrian looked away reluctantly as his assistant approached. "The investors are waiting." For a brief moment, Adrian glanced back toward Amara once more before leaving. He didn't fully understand it yet, but he was beginning to look for her unconsciously. Meanwhile, Evelyn Cole visited the cafe almost every other day. At first, she claimed it was because she enjoyed the pastries, but both Adrian and Amara secretly knew the truth. She genuinely liked spending time with Amara. One afternoon, Evelyn sat comfortably near the window while Amara served tea. "You're getting healthier," Evelyn observed happily. Amara smiled shyly. "I think regular meals help." Evelyn reached over and squeezed her hand affectionately. "You deserve happiness, my dear." Amara's chest warmed instantly. She had forgotten what motherly affection felt like. Before she could respond, Evelyn lowered her voice mischievously. "My son talks about you often." Amara nearly choked on her tea. "He does?" "Oh yes." Evelyn smiled knowingly. "Much more than he realizes." Amara's cheeks turned pink instantly. "I think you're misunderstanding." "Am I?" Before Amara could answer, Adrian suddenly appeared beside their table. "What are you two discussing?" he asked suspiciously. Evelyn looked completely innocent. "Nothing." Adrian narrowed his eyes slightly. Amara tried hiding her embarrassed face. Adrian immediately noticed, and somehow, that made him even more curious. But not everyone inside Cole Enterprises welcomed Amara warmly, especially Vanessa Hart. Vanessa was beautiful, wealthy, and elegant, the type of woman magazines constantly photographed beside powerful men. For nearly 2 years, everyone believed she and Adrian would eventually marry. Even though Adrian never officially confirmed their relationship, Vanessa behaved as though she already owned his future, until Amara appeared. The first time Vanessa heard employees discussing the cafe girl, she ignored it. But when she noticed Adrian personally visiting the cafe almost daily, suspicion grew rapidly. One afternoon, Vanessa finally arrived unannounced at Cole Enterprises. Every employee immediately recognized her. She stepped elegantly through the lobby in a tight red designer dress and expensive heels, radiating confidence. But the moment she entered the cafe and saw Adrian sitting across from Amara laughing softly at something she said, jealousy exploded inside her chest. Adrian never laughed like that with anyone, especially not her. Vanessa walked toward them slowly. The entire cafe sensed tension immediately. "Adrian," Vanessa said sweetly. Adrian looked up, his expression instantly cooling slightly. "Vanessa." Then her eyes shifted toward Amara. The smile on her face became thinner. "So this is the famous girl everyone keeps talking about." Amara stood awkwardly. "Good afternoon." Vanessa's gaze swept slowly over her simple clothes. "Interesting. So this was the homeless girl stealing Adrian's attention." Vanessa almost laughed. "She's cute," Vanessa said casually, though the insult beneath her tone was obvious. Adrian's expression hardened slightly. Amara lowered her eyes quietly, uncomfortable. Vanessa crossed her arms. "You know, Adrian usually surrounds himself with women from certain circles." The cafe became completely silent. Amara immediately understood the insult. So did Adrian. "Vanessa," Adrian said coldly. But Vanessa continued smiling. "I'm simply surprised. That's all." Amara quickly spoke before things worsened. "I should get back to work." She turned to leave, but Adrian suddenly stood. "No," he said firmly. The entire cafe froze. Adrian looked directly at Vanessa. "You will not disrespect her." Vanessa stared at him in disbelief. "Excuse me?" I said. Adrian repeated calmly. "You will not disrespect her." Silence crashed heavily over the cafe. Vanessa's face burned with humiliation. Never before had Adrian defended another woman against her. Never. "She's just a worker," Vanessa snapped before she could stop herself. Adrian's eyes turned icy instantly. "And you're a guest in my company," he replied sharply. "Act accordingly." Vanessa looked stunned. Amara herself could barely breathe. After several painful seconds, Vanessa grabbed her purse angrily. "This conversation isn't over." Then she stormed out of the cafe furiously. The moment she disappeared, silence still lingered. Amara slowly looked up at Adrian. "You didn't have to do that." Adrian's expression softened the moment he looked at her. "Yes," he said quietly, "I did." And somewhere deep inside both their hearts, something had already begun changing forever. After the confrontation with Vanessa, things inside Cole Enterprises changed noticeably. The rumors spread through the company faster than wildfire. The CEO defended her. In front of everyone. Vanessa looked furious. Employees whispered constantly whenever Amara walked past. Some people admired her. Others envied her. A few openly judged her. But Amara tried her best to ignore it all. She had spent too many years surviving harsh words to let gossip destroy her peace now. Still, what Adrian had done stayed in her mind. No one had ever defended her like that before. Not her relatives. Not former employers. Not even strangers. Yet Adrian had stood beside her without hesitation. And somehow that frightened her more than the gossip itself. Because little by little, her heart was beginning to care about him far too much. A few days later, Amara arrived at work earlier than usual. The city was still waking up while pale morning sunlight spilled softly across the streets of Lagos. Inside the cafe, she quietly arranged fresh pastries behind the glass counter while soft music played overhead. For once, the building felt peaceful, until she heard a familiar deep voice behind her. "You're here early." Amara turned quickly. Adrian stood near the counter holding his phone in one hand, dressed in a black suit with his tie slightly loosened. He looked tired, as though he had barely slept. Still somehow annoyingly handsome. Her stomach flipped unexpectedly. "Good morning," she said softly. "Good morning." He glanced around the empty cafe. "You always start this early?" Amara nodded. "I like preparing things before customers arrive." Adrian studied her quietly for a moment. There was something calming about watching her work. Unlike everyone around him constantly chasing power and money, Amara moved through life gently, carefully, like someone who still saw goodness in the world despite all its cruelty. "Have you eaten breakfast?" he asked suddenly. Amara blinked. "Not yet." "Come with me." Her eyes widened. "What? Breakfast?" She looked nervous immediately. "Sir, I should stay here. Clara won't mind." Almost as if summoned magically, Clara suddenly appeared from the back room. "You can go," she said quickly. Amara stared suspiciously between both of them. Adrian looked far too innocent. Slowly, Amara removed her apron. "Okay." 10 minutes later, she sat awkwardly across from Adrian inside a quiet rooftop restaurant overlooking the city skyline. Everything about the place screamed luxury. Fresh flowers decorated the tables while waiters moved silently between guests. Amara felt completely out of place again. Adrian noticed instantly. "You don't have to look so nervous." She gave a small, embarrassed laugh. "I still feel like security might throw me out of places like this." Adrian frowned slightly. "No one will ever throw you out while you're with me." The sincerity in his voice made her heartbeat quicken. A waiter approached respectfully. "Your usual, Mr. Cole?" Adrian glanced toward Amara instead. "What would you like?" Amara immediately panicked. The menu alone looked expensive enough to pay rent for months. "Anything is fine." Adrian seemed to realize her discomfort and calmly ordered for both of them. Soon, plates of pancakes, eggs, fruit, and tea arrived. Amara stared quietly at the food. "You really don't have to spend this much on me," she murmured. Adrian leaned back slightly in his chair. "You keep saying that." "Because it's true. And I keep ignoring it." To her surprise, a small smile appeared on his face. Amara found herself smiling back before she could stop it. For a moment, neither of them looked away. Something warm and dangerous passed silently between them. Adrian cleared his throat first. My mother wants you to have dinner with us tomorrow. Amara nearly dropped her fork. With your family? She already considers you family. The softness in his tone caught her off guard again. Amara looked down quickly, trying to calm the strange fluttering inside her chest. No man had ever spoken to her this way before. Not with respect. Not with gentleness. Certainly not a man like Adrian. That evening, Amara stood nervously in front of her apartment mirror trying on dresses Mrs. Daniels had delivered earlier. Apparently Evelyn refused to let her attend dinner, looking too simple. The problem was every dress looked far too elegant for someone like her. She finally settled on a modest dark green gown that hugged her figure softly without feeling too flashy. Still, anxiety twisted painfully inside her stomach. What if Adrian's family regretted helping her? What if she embarrassed herself? The next evening, a black luxury car arrived to pick her up. Amara nearly fainted when she saw the enormous Cole mansion. The property looked more like a royal palace than a home. Golden lights illuminated beautiful gardens, while fountains sparkled beneath the night sky. A nervous servant escorted her inside. The interior was breathtaking. Massive chandeliers hung from high ceilings, while polished marble floors reflected warm light across the mansion. Amara suddenly became hyper-aware of every step she took. Then she heard Evelyn's cheerful voice. There she is. Evelyn walked toward her smiling warmly before pulling her into a hug. You look beautiful, my dear. Amara smiled shyly. Thank you. You're too thin. Evelyn complained immediately. We must feed you properly tonight. Amara laughed softly. The sound made Adrian pause from across the room. He had just walked downstairs when he saw her. And for a brief second, he completely forgot how to breathe. The dark green dress suited her perfectly. Her natural curls framed her face beautifully, and for once she looked relaxed instead of anxious. Beautiful. The word hit Adrian harder than expected. Evelyn noticed the way her son stared at Amara and nearly smiled to herself. Interesting. Very interesting. Adrian. Evelyn called deliberately. He blinked slightly before walking closer. You look lovely tonight, he said quietly to Amara. Heat rushed instantly into her cheeks. Thank you. Their eyes held briefly again before Evelyn interrupted dramatically. If both of you are done staring at each other, dinner is ready. Amara nearly choked from embarrassment while Adrian looked mildly annoyed. Evelyn enjoyed every second. Dinner turned out far less frightening than Amara expected. Evelyn spent most of the evening telling embarrassing stories about Adrian's childhood. He once locked himself inside a bathroom for 2 hours because he didn't want piano lessons. Mother. And when he was 12, he punched a boy for insulting me. Mother. Amara laughed so hard tears formed in her eyes. Adrian sighed heavily. I regret inviting you here. You were adorable, Evelyn insisted proudly. Amara looked at Adrian with surprise. You punched someone? He deserved it. The serious expression on his face made her laugh again. And for the first time in years, the mansion felt alive, warm, comfortable. After dinner, Evelyn conveniently claimed sudden tiredness. Oh dear, she said dramatically. I think I'll sleep early tonight. Adrian narrowed his eyes suspiciously. His mother ignored him completely. You two should enjoy the garden. Then she disappeared upstairs before either could protest. Silence settled briefly between Adrian and Amara. Well, he said finally, she planned that. Amara smiled softly. Obviously, to his surprise, being alone with her suddenly made him nervous. That almost never happened. Would you like to walk outside? He asked. She nodded. The night air felt cool and peaceful as they walked slowly through the garden paths. Beautiful white flowers surrounded them while soft lights glowed beneath the trees. For a while, neither spoke. Yet the silence felt comfortable. Not awkward, just peaceful. Amara finally glanced at him. You work too much. Adrian looked surprised. What? You always look tired. He gave a short laugh. That sounds exactly like my mother. She worries about you. I know. Amara hesitated briefly before speaking again. You should rest more. Something about the quiet concern in her voice affected him deeply. Very few people cared about Adrian himself. Most people cared about his money, his power, his company. But Amara looked at him differently, like he was simply a person. Not a billionaire, not a CEO, just Adrian. They eventually reached a small fountain near the far end of the garden. The city lights shimmered beautifully in the distance. "It's peaceful here," Amara whispered. Adrian watched her instead of the view. "Yes," he replied softly. She turned slightly toward him, and suddenly the air between them shifted again. Something invisible, heavy, intimate. Adrian took a slow step closer. Amara's breath caught instantly. Her heart hammered wildly against her chest. He was close enough now that she could smell his cologne faintly, close enough to see the intensity in his dark eyes. For one dangerous moment, she thought he might kiss her. But instead, Adrian spoke quietly. "Why are you still kind?" She blinked softly. "What do you mean?" "After everything you've suffered." His gaze remained fixed on hers. Most people would become angry at the world. Amara looked away briefly toward the fountain. "I tried being angry once, and it made the pain worse." Adrian listened silently. Amara's voice softened. "When you know what suffering feels like, you stop wanting others to feel it too." The honesty in her words hit him deeply. Adrian had spent years surrounded by fake people, manipulative people, cruel people. Yet somehow this woman who had lost almost everything still carried compassion inside her heart. Felt rare, beautiful, dangerous, because the more time he spent around her, the harder it became to imagine life without her. Slowly, almost unconsciously, Adrian reached for her hand. Amara froze softly when his fingers touched hers. Warmth spread instantly through both of them. Neither pulled away. The fountain water splashed quietly nearby while the city lights flickered beyond the garden walls. Adrian stared down at her gently, and for the first time in many years, his carefully controlled heart slipped completely out of his hands. Upstairs, Evelyn stood secretly behind the window curtains watching them below. When she saw Adrian holding Amara's hand, a knowing smile spread slowly across her face. Finally, her stubborn son was falling in love. And judging by the way Amara looked at him, she was falling too. But far away in her luxury apartment, Vanessa Hart sat furiously scrolling through social media posts about Adrian and Amara. One headline made her blood boil instantly. "Mystery woman spotted leaving Cole family mansion." Vanessa's grip tightened around her phone. Her jealousy had now become something much darker. Hatred. And deep inside, she made herself a promise. No matter what happened, she would never allow Amara to keep Adrian. The following week became one of the happiest periods Amara had experienced in years. For the first time since arriving in Lagos, she no longer woke up afraid. No fear of hunger. No fear of sleeping on cold streets. No fear of cruel landlords or dangerous strangers. And although she still struggled to adjust to her new life, there was now warmth surrounding her everywhere she went. Especially whenever Adrian was near. The two of them had grown noticeably closer after the evening at the mansion. Employees at Cole Enterprises began whispering even more openly. The CEO smiles around her. He never used to visit the cafe this often. They looked good together. Amara tried ignoring the gossip, but deep inside, her feelings for Adrian were becoming impossible to deny. She noticed everything about him now. The way he loosened his tie after stressful meetings. The way his serious expression softened slightly whenever she laughed. The way he always noticed when she skipped meals or looked tired. And somehow, despite being one of the richest men in the country, Adrian never made her feel small. He made her feel seen, valued, safe. That frightened her, because she knew men like Adrian belonged to different worlds. Worlds that women like her rarely entered permanently. Still, every time he looked at her, hope whispered dangerous things into her heart. One afternoon, Adrian sat inside the cafe pretending to review documents while secretly watching Amara organize pastries behind the counter. His assistant David noticed immediately. "You know those papers are upside down, right?" Adrian looked down calmly. They were. Without embarrassment, he flipped them over. David nearly laughed. You're distracted. I'm working. You've been staring at the same page for 10 minutes. Adrian ignored him, but David leaned closer with a grin. So when exactly are you going to admit you like her? Adrian finally looked up sharply. I didn't say that. You don't have to. David smirked knowingly. Everyone can see it. Adrian glanced toward Amara again unconsciously. She was helping one of the security guards carry a tray while smiling softly at something he said. That familiar warmth settled in Adrian's chest again. Dangerous, powerful, real. David followed his gaze. She's good for you. Adrian's expression became quieter. I know. Before David could reply, Adrian's phone rang. His expression immediately darkened when he saw the caller ID. Vanessa. He rejected the call instantly. Unfortunately, Vanessa was not the type of woman who accepted rejection quietly. Across town, Vanessa Hart sat inside her luxurious penthouse apartment with fury burning inside her chest. Several fashion magazines lay scattered around her living room, all featuring glamorous photos of powerful wealthy couples. The kind of life she believed belonged to her. The kind of future she believed Adrian had stolen away. Her phone screen displayed another blurry photo of Adrian and Amara leaving a restaurant together. Vanessa's nails dug sharply into the couch. It made no sense. Why would Adrian choose a homeless nobody over her? She was educated, elegant, beautiful, from one of the wealthiest families in the country. Yet somehow Adrian looked happier beside Amara than he had ever looked beside her. That alone humiliated Vanessa deeply. A bitter laugh escaped her lips. No, she muttered coldly. She refused to lose, especially not to a girl from the streets. Then suddenly, an idea formed in her mind. Cruel, simple, effective. Slowly, Vanessa smiled. The next morning, Amara arrived at work unusually cheerful. Evelyn had invited her to another family dinner later that week, and Adrian had texted her for the first time the previous night. Just a simple message. Don't skip dinner again. Yet somehow she had smiled at the phone for almost 10 minutes afterward. As she arranged coffee cups behind the counter, Clara approached her. Mr. Cole left for Abuja this morning for a business conference. Amara tried hiding her disappointment. Oh, he'll be gone 2 days. For some reason, hearing that made the cafe feel emptier already. Clara noticed the subtle sadness in her face and secretly smiled to herself. Poor girl. Completely in love already. Around lunchtime, the cafe became crowded with employees rushing between meetings. Amara moved quickly between tables carrying orders carefully. Everything felt normal, until 2 security officers suddenly entered the cafe. Their expressions were serious. Every conversation around the room quieted slightly. Miss Amara, one officer said formally. She looked confused. Yes, we need you to come with us. Her stomach tightened instantly. What happened? The officer exchanged glances with his partner before answering. There's been a theft report. The cafe grew silent. Amara blinked in confusion. A theft? One of Mrs. Evelyn Cole's diamond bracelets is missing. Shock spread across Amara's face immediately. What does that have to do with me? We need to search your locker. The entire cafe erupted into whispers. Amara's heart began pounding painfully. I didn't take anything. Then there shouldn't be a problem. Fear crawled slowly into her chest. Still trembling, she followed the officers toward the employee lockers downstairs, while dozens of curious employees watched. Some looked sympathetic. Others looked suspicious already. Amara's breathing became uneven as they stopped in front of her locker. One officer unlocked it carefully. Then everything happened too fast. The moment the locker opened, a small velvet jewelry box fell onto the floor. Silence. One of the guards slowly bent down and opened it. Inside rested Evelyn Cole's missing diamond bracelet. Amara felt the world stop. No, she whispered shakily. The officer's expressions hardened instantly. Miss Amara, one guard said carefully, can you explain this? Her entire body began trembling. I've never seen that before. but the evidence sat directly inside her locker. Employees gathered nearby began whispering louder. "Oh my God! She stole from them? I knew it was too good to be true. She used to be homeless." The words stabbed into Amara like knives. "No," she cried softly. "I didn't steal anything." Clara looked genuinely shocked. "Amara!" Tears gathered in Amara's eyes immediately. "I swear I didn't." But nobody seemed certain anymore. The guards exchanged glances. "We'll need you to come with us." Humiliation burned through her chest as employees stared openly while she was escorted upstairs. Some looked disappointed. Others looked disgusted. And the worst part? Adrian wasn't there. By evening, the entire company already knew. News spread rapidly online as gossip blogs published headlines immediately. Homeless girl accused of stealing from billionaire family. Adrian Cole's mystery woman exposed? Inside a private office, Amara sat trembling quietly while tears rolled endlessly down her cheeks. She had never felt so ashamed in her life. Even though she was innocent. One female employee finally handed her water gently. "Maybe you should just confess," she whispered sympathetically. Amara looked horrified. "But I didn't do anything." The woman sighed sadly. "The evidence looks bad." Amara lowered her head into her shaking hands. For the first time in years, hopelessness returned. Maybe this was foolish from the beginning. Maybe people like her were never truly accepted into worlds like Adrian's. Meanwhile, far away in Abuja, Adrian had just finished a business presentation when David rushed toward him holding a tablet. "You need to see this." Adrian frowned slightly. Then he read the headline. His expression changed instantly. Cold fury flashed through his eyes. "What happened?" he demanded sharply. David explained everything quickly. Adrian listened silently. But one thing became immediately clear in his mind. Amara did not steal anything. Not possible. Not her. Without another word, Adrian grabbed his jacket. "Cancel everything." "Sir, I'm going back to Lagos." By the time Adrian arrived at Cole Enterprises late that night, tension filled the entire building. Employees immediately straightened nervously the moment he stepped inside. His face looked terrifyingly calm, which somehow made him even scarier. "Where is she?" he asked coldly. David answered quietly. "Security office." Adrian headed there immediately. When Amara saw him enter, fresh tears filled her eyes. "Adrian, you don't need to explain," he interrupted softly. She froze. "I know you didn't do it." Those 6 words shattered the remaining strength inside her. Amara burst into tears instantly. Everyone else in the room looked shocked. Even the officers seemed uncomfortable now. Adrian turned toward security coldly. "Show me the footage." Within minutes, surveillance videos from the locker hallway appeared on screen. Several employees watched nervously. First, nothing looked unusual. Then Adrian suddenly leaned forward slightly. "Pause." The screen froze. A male employee stood near the lockers alone. Adrian's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Zoom in." The footage became clearer. The employee glanced around nervously before opening Amara's locker using a spare key. Then he placed something inside. Gasps filled the room instantly. Amara covered her mouth in shock. Adrian's voice turned icy. "Bring him to me." The employee was dragged into the room 30 minutes later, sweating heavily and trembling with fear. I can explain." "Who paid you?" Adrian interrupted coldly. The man froze. "No one." Adrian slammed his hand violently against the table. The entire room jumped. "Who paid you?" Terrified, the employee finally broke. "It was Vanessa," he cried. "She offered me money." Silence crashed heavily across the room. Amara stared in disbelief. The employee continued shaking. "She said she just wanted the girl gone." Adrian's face became dangerously expressionless, which was far worse than anger. "Get him out of my sight." The guards immediately dragged the man away. Then Adrian pulled out his phone calmly. "Blacklist Vanessa Hart from every Cole property and company effective immediately." "Yes, sir. And if she enters any building connected to my company again, call security." The call ended. Silence settled again. Then Adrian finally turned back toward Amara. She still looked shattered, small, heartbroken. The sight made guilt stab painfully through his chest. Because despite proving her innocence, she had still suffered humiliation because of him. Slowly, Adrian stepped closer. Amara. Fresh tears slipped down her face. You believed me? She whispered weakly. Adrian stared at her like the answer should have been obvious. Always. That single word broke her completely. A sob escaped her lips as she covered her face. Without hesitation, Adrian pulled her gently into his arms. Amara clung to him instantly, crying against his chest while years of pain, fear, and humiliation poured out all at once. And Adrian held her tightly, protectively, like he never intended to let anyone hurt her again. I'm sorry, he murmured quietly against her hair. Amara shook her head tearfully. You came back for me. Adrian closed his eyes briefly. Of course he did. There was nowhere else he would rather be. After several moments, Amara finally looked up at him with trembling eyes. And in that exact moment, Adrian realized the terrifying truth. He was completely, hopelessly in love with her. After the incident with Vanessa, something between Adrian and Amara changed completely. The invisible wall that once stood between them slowly disappeared. No more pretending. No more hiding feelings behind polite conversations and lingering stares. Now, whenever Adrian looked at Amara, there was something open and undeniable in his eyes. Love. And Amara felt it every single time. The morning after Adrian exposed Vanessa's scheme, Amara woke slowly inside her apartment feeling emotionally exhausted. Her eyes were swollen from crying. The humiliation from yesterday still lingered painfully inside her chest. Even though Adrian believed her immediately, the cruel whispers from employees continued echoing in her mind. She used to be homeless. I knew she couldn't be trusted. Amara sat quietly on the edge of her bed, hugging herself tightly. Maybe she truly did not belong in Adrian's world. Maybe Vanessa had only exposed a truth everyone secretly believed already. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Amara wiped her eyes quickly before opening the door. She froze in surprise. Adrian stood outside holding 2 cups of coffee. You didn't come to work, he said calmly. Amara looked down nervously. I didn't think I should. Without waiting for permission, Adrian stepped inside and closed the door gently behind him. Then he handed her one of the coffees. You're innocent. I know. Then why are you hiding? Amara stared quietly at the floor. It's embarrassing. Adrian's expression softened instantly. Look at me. Slowly, she lifted her eyes. You have nothing to be ashamed of, he said firmly. Something inside her chest tightened painfully again. How can you say that so easily? Because it's true. Amara laughed weakly through lingering tears. You didn't hear the things people said about me. Adrian stepped closer slowly. I don't care what people say. But I do. For a moment, silence filled the apartment. Then Adrian spoke quietly. You survived things most people couldn't survive. His eyes held hers steadily. Never let small-minded people make you feel worthless. Amara swallowed hard. Nobody had ever defended her so fiercely before. Not even herself. Adrian glanced around the apartment briefly before looking back at her. Get dressed. She blinked. What? We're going out. I don't really feel like. That wasn't a suggestion. Despite herself, Amara almost smiled. An hour later, Adrian drove them through Lagos in one of his black luxury cars. Amara sat quietly beside him, still emotionally drained. She finally glanced toward him. Where are we going? You'll see. To her surprise, Adrian eventually stopped near the beach. The ocean stretched endlessly beneath the bright afternoon sky while waves crashed peacefully against the shore. Amara looked confused. The beach. You need air. She stared at him quietly. For someone constantly described by newspapers as cold and ruthless, Adrian understood emotions frighteningly well. They walked slowly along the shoreline in comfortable silence while cool wind blew around them. For a while, neither spoke. Then Amara suddenly asked softly, Why do you care about me so much? Adrian looked at her carefully. The vulnerability in her voice almost hurt to hear. I don't know, he admitted honestly. That surprised her. Adrian gave a small humorless laugh. I'm usually good at understanding everything around me. He shoved his hands into his pockets. Business, people, situations. But not this. No, his gaze met hers again. Not this. Amara's heartbeat quickened. The ocean breeze lifted strands of her hair gently as they stood facing each other beneath the sunlight. Then Adrian stepped closer. So maybe I should stop trying to explain it. Her breath caught softly. Adrian, you matter to me. The words hit her deeply, powerfully, and before she could stop herself, tears filled her eyes again. Adrian sighed quietly. You cry a lot around me. Amara laughed through the tears. Maybe you stress me too much. That finally made him smile properly. A real smile, beautiful enough to steal her breath completely. Without thinking, Amara smiled back. And suddenly, for the first time since the scandal, everything felt lighter. Over the next few weeks, Adrian became almost inseparable from her. He visited the cafe daily, sometimes twice, sometimes for absolutely no reason at all. Employees noticed immediately. The CEO is definitely in love. There's no way this is friendship anymore. Even Clara eventually cornered Amara near the coffee machine one afternoon. So, Clara said casually, when exactly are you becoming Mrs. Cole? Amara nearly dropped an entire tray. Mrs. what? Clara burst into laughter. Oh please, that man looks at you like you invented happiness. Amara's cheeks turned bright red instantly. Meanwhile, Adrian himself seemed completely unaware of how obvious his feelings had become. One evening, he invited Amara to dinner after work again. This time, instead of a fancy restaurant, he took her to a small local food spot hidden away from the busy city. Amara looked genuinely surprised. You eat here? Adrian shrugged. The owner knew my father. The old restaurant owner immediately greeted Adrian warmly. And who is this beautiful young woman? Amara nearly choked while Adrian calmly replied, someone important. The simple answer made her heart race again. As they ate together beneath dim yellow lights, Amara found herself relaxing more around him than ever before. For the first time in years, she laughed freely. Truly freely. She told him stories about her village childhood. How she used to climb mango trees. How her mother sang while cooking. How her father danced terribly during festivals. Adrian listened carefully to every word. Not pretending. Not distracted. Actually listening. And something painful settled quietly inside him as he realized how much life had stolen from her. You miss them, he said softly. Amara nodded slowly. Every day. Adrian stared at her for a moment before speaking again. I think they would be proud of you. That nearly broke her heart. Because no one had ever said that before. That same night, after dropping Amara home, Adrian remained sitting inside his car long after she entered the apartment building. His mind replayed her laughter endlessly, her smile, the softness in her eyes whenever she looked at him now. He exhaled slowly and rubbed his face tiredly. This was bad, very bad, because Adrian Cole, the man who avoided emotional attachments for years, was now completely consumed by one woman. And somehow, he didn't want to escape it. His phone suddenly rang. Evelyn. Well? His mother asked immediately. Adrian frowned. Well, what? Are you finally going to marry that girl, or should I handle it myself? Adrian nearly laughed. Mother. I'm serious. He leaned back against the seat quietly. So am I. Silence filled the call briefly. Then Evelyn's voice softened. You love her. Adrian looked toward Amara's apartment window glowing faintly upstairs. Yes, he admitted quietly. The word felt terrifying. And right. Evelyn sounded emotional instantly. Oh, thank God. I was beginning to think you'd die alone and stubborn. Adrian finally laughed fully. I'll call you tomorrow. You better propose before another woman steals her. No one's stealing her. The possessiveness in his tone surprised even himself. Evelyn smiled knowingly before ending the call. A few days later, Adrian organized a massive charity event through Cole Enterprises. The event focused on helping homeless shelters and struggling families across Lagos. Amara immediately volunteered to help. The moment she arrived at the beautifully decorated event hall, she froze in shock. Hundreds of people filled the venue. Reporters, business leaders, celebrities. Large banners displaying Cole Enterprises logos hung across the walls while cameras flashed constantly. Amara suddenly felt nervous again. She adjusted her simple, elegant dress awkwardly. "I shouldn't be here." A deep, familiar voice answered behind her. "You're exactly where you belong." She turned and completely lost her breath. Adrian wore a perfectly tailored black tuxedo that made him look devastatingly handsome beneath the bright lights. His eyes softened instantly the moment they landed on her. "You look beautiful," he said quietly. Amara smiled shyly. "You always say that." "Because it's always true." Before she could answer, Evelyn suddenly appeared beside them looking suspiciously emotional. "You both look perfect together," she declared dramatically. Adrian narrowed his eyes slightly. "Mother, what are you planning?" "Nothing." That answer alone made him suspicious. The charity event began beautifully. Several speakers discussed homelessness and poverty while donations poured in from wealthy guests. Amara spent most of the evening helping organize supplies and speaking kindly with struggling families invited to the event. Watching her interact with people touched Adrian deeply. She never acted superior, never treated anyone with pity. She treated people with dignity, like she understood their pain personally. Because she did. Eventually, the host stepped onto the stage again. "And now," he announced, "Mr. Adrian Cole would like to say a few words." Applause filled the hall. Adrian walked confidently toward the microphone while cameras flashed endlessly around him. Amara watched quietly from near the front tables. At first, Adrian spoke normally about the charity foundation and future plans for helping homeless communities. Then suddenly, his tone changed. "Tonight," he said calmly, "I also want to speak about someone important." Amara frowned slightly. Adrian's eyes found hers immediately across the room. And suddenly, her heart began pounding. The entire hall grew quieter. "A few months ago," Adrian continued softly, "my mother became lost during a storm." Evelyn smiled proudly nearby. And while dozens of people ignored her, Adrian's gaze never left Amara. One person stopped to help. Amara's eyes widened slowly. She had no home, no money, no reason to expect anything in return. Adrian's voice became gentler, but she still chose kindness. The hall listened silently now. "That woman changed my life." Amara's breathing became uneven. "Oh no, oh no." Adrian stepped down from the stage slowly, then walked directly toward her. The entire room gasped softly. Amara stared at him in shock as he stopped in front of her. "Adrian," but before she could continue, he knelt down. The entire hall exploded into shocked whispers. Cameras flashed wildly. Amara covered her mouth instantly as Adrian pulled out a small velvet ring box. Inside sparkled the most beautiful diamond ring she had ever seen. Tears flooded her eyes immediately. Adrian looked up at her steadily. "You loved people when you had nothing," he said softly. "You stayed kind when life gave you every reason to become cruel." Amara was already crying openly now. "You made my mother happy again. You made my home feel alive again." His voice lowered slightly. "And somehow, you made me fall completely in love with you." The entire hall watched breathlessly. Adrian's eyes never left hers. "Amara," he whispered, "will you marry me?" Time seemed to stop. The homeless girl who once slept beneath a bridge now stood surrounded by chandeliers, cameras, and powerful people, while the country's most desired billionaire waited for her answer. Fresh tears streamed endlessly down her cheeks, and through those tears, she smiled. "Yes," she cried softly. Adrian's entire expression changed instantly with relief and happiness. "Yes, yes." The crowd erupted into loud applause and cheers, while Evelyn wiped tears from her eyes proudly. Adrian slipped the ring onto Amara's trembling finger before standing up. Then, without caring about cameras or gossip or the entire world watching, he pulled her into his arms and kissed her gently. And at that exact moment, Amara realized something beautiful. For the first time in her life, she was truly loved. The moment Adrian proposed to Amara, the entire country exploded with reactions. News channels replayed the proposal repeatedly. Social media flooded with videos of Adrian kneeling before the former homeless girl at the charity event. Some people called it the greatest love story they had ever seen. Others mocked it mercilessly. But no matter what anyone said, one thing became undeniable. Amara had become the most talked about woman in Nigeria overnight. 3 days after the proposal, Amara sat nervously inside her apartment staring at dozens of news headlines on her phone. Billionaire CEO to marry former homeless woman. Real love or publicity stunt? Who is Amara? Her chest tightened painfully. The comments underneath were even worse. She trapped him. Rich men always get bored eventually. She doesn't belong in that family. Amara slowly lowered the phone onto the table. For years, she had survived insults. But now those insults felt heavier because she had something precious to lose. Adrian. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. She opened the door and immediately froze. Adrian stood there holding takeout food bags in one hand and flowers in the other. "You looked stressed during our phone call," he said simply. Amara blinked. "You brought flowers? You sound surprised." She smiled softly. "Nobody has ever brought me flowers before." Something shifted quietly in Adrian's expression at those words. Like the thought genuinely hurt him. "Well," he said calmly while stepping inside, "you'll have to get used to it." Amara laughed softly despite herself. Adrian placed the flowers carefully on the table before studying her face. "You've been reading comments again." It wasn't a question. Amara sighed quietly. "People are cruel. They're irrelevant." "That's easy for you to say." Adrian walked closer slowly. "No," he corrected gently. "It's easy for me to say because I learned something important a long time ago." She looked up at him. "People will always criticize happiness they don't understand." Amara stared quietly at him. "How do you always know what to say?" "I don't. But you make me feel calm." For a moment, silence settled softly between them. Then Adrian reached up and brushed his fingers lightly against her cheek. "You don't need anyone's approval to deserve love." The tenderness in his voice nearly made her cry again. Adrian sighed dramatically. "If you start crying again, I'm canceling the internet permanently." That made her laugh through the tears. And just like that, the heaviness inside her chest eased again. Wedding preparations began almost immediately. Unfortunately, planning a billionaire wedding turned out to be overwhelming. Every major wedding company in Lagos wanted involvement. Fashion designers begged to create Amara's gown. Luxury magazines requested exclusive interviews. Even international blogs began covering the story. Amara felt like she had accidentally stepped into another universe entirely. One afternoon, Evelyn dragged her into a massive bridal boutique. "You need the perfect dress." Amara stared nervously at the endless rows of expensive gowns. "These dresses probably cost more than houses." Evelyn waved dismissively. "My son can afford it." "That's not the point." Evelyn turned toward her with surprising seriousness. "Amara." She blinked. "You deserve beautiful things too." The simple statement touched her deeply. For so many years, Amara had convinced herself survival was enough. She never allowed herself to desire luxury, comfort, beauty, because those things felt meant for other people, not her. But now, standing beside Evelyn inside the elegant boutique, she slowly began understanding something difficult. She was allowed to be happy too. Hours later, after trying countless gowns, Amara finally stepped out wearing a breathtaking white dress covered in delicate lace and shimmering details. The room fell silent instantly. Evelyn placed a hand over her chest emotionally. "Oh my God!" Amara turned slowly toward the mirror and completely froze. For a moment, she did not recognize herself. The dress hugged her figure perfectly, while the soft fabric flowed gracefully around her like something from a dream. Tears filled her eyes immediately. "Why are you crying?" Evelyn asked softly. Amara laughed shakily. "I just never imagined." Her voice broke. Evelyn immediately hugged her tightly. "My dear," she whispered emotionally, "you are going to be the most beautiful bride." Meanwhile, Adrian was experiencing his own problems. Namely, the entire country suddenly wanted access to him. Business partners who rarely cared about his personal life now demanded wedding invitations. Magazine companies offered enormous amounts of money for exclusive photos. Even distant relatives appeared from nowhere pretending closeness. Adrian hated every second of it. One evening, David found him glaring at a guest list angrily inside his office. "You look like you're planning murder." "I might." David laughed before sitting across from him. "You know most men panic about marriage itself." He pointed toward the endless paperwork. "You're panicking about flower arrangements." Adrian rubbed his forehead tiredly. "I just want the day to be perfect for her." David's expression softened slightly. "You really love her?" Adrian didn't even hesitate anymore. "Yes." The answer came naturally now. Steady. Certain. David leaned back with amusement. 6 months ago you claimed relationships were distractions." Adrian smirked faintly. 6 months ago I was miserable." That answer surprised even himself slightly. Because it was true. Before Amara, his life had been nothing but endless work and cold routine. Now everything felt different. Lighter. Warmer. Meaningful. And he would protect that happiness with everything he had. Unfortunately, not everyone celebrated their love. Vanessa Hart watched every wedding update with growing bitterness. Being publicly banned from Cole Enterprises had already damaged her reputation badly. Now seeing Adrian openly preparing to marry Amara felt unbearable. One afternoon, Vanessa stormed into her father's office furious. "He's embarrassing himself." Her father sighed tiredly. Adrian made his choice. She was homeless, and now she isn't. Vanessa clenched her fists tightly. "You don't understand. She manipulated him." Her father looked at her quietly for a long moment. Then he spoke carefully. "No, Vanessa. I think she simply loved him better than you did." The words hit her like a slap. Vanessa turned away angrily before he could see the tears gathering in her eyes. Deep down, even she knew the painful truth. Adrian had never looked at her the way he looked at Amara. Never. As the wedding day approached, Amara's nervousness increased terribly. One night, she stood alone on the balcony of her apartment staring at the city lights below. Her engagement ring sparkled softly beneath the moonlight. Still, fear lingered quietly inside her heart. What if she failed? What if she embarrassed Adrian after marriage? What if one day he realized she truly didn't belong beside him? "You're thinking too loudly again." Amara turned quickly. Adrian stepped onto the balcony carrying 2 mugs of tea. She smiled softly. "Is that even possible? With you?" "Yes." He handed her 1 mug before leaning beside her against the railing. For a while, they stood silently watching Lagos glow beneath the night sky. Then Amara finally whispered, "What if I'm not enough for your world?" Adrian immediately looked at her. "Amara, I'm serious." His expression softened completely. "You know what my world looked like before you?" She stayed quiet. "Cold," Adrian answered himself. "Empty. Exhausting." His eyes held hers steadily. "You made it feel like home." Emotion tightened painfully inside her chest. "You really mean that?" "Yes." Without hesitation. Without doubt. Just truth. Adrian reached for her hand slowly. "The only thing I need from you," he said quietly, "is exactly who you already are." Amara's eyes filled with tears again. Adrian sighed dramatically. "There it is." She laughed through the tears while lightly hitting his arm. "You're rude. You're emotional. You make me emotional." A small smile tugged at Adrian's lips. Then softly, gently, he kissed her forehead. And suddenly all her fears became smaller. Finally, the wedding day arrived. From early morning, the entire city buzzed with excitement. Major television stations covered the event live. Luxury cars lined the roads leading toward the enormous garden venue decorated with thousands of white flowers and golden lights. Everything looked magical. Inside the bridal suite, makeup artists rushed around nervously while Amara sat before a large mirror trying to calm her racing heartbeat. "You look stunning," one stylist whispered, but Amara could barely breathe. Evelyn entered moments later wearing an elegant silver gown. The moment she saw Amara fully dressed, tears instantly filled her eyes. "Oh my goodness!" Amara stood slowly. The wedding dress shimmered beautifully around her while a long veil flowed behind her gracefully. Evelyn covered her mouth emotionally. "You look like an angel." Amara laughed nervously. "I feel like I might faint." "You better not." Evelyn wiped her tears carefully. "My son would probably destroy the entire venue." That made Amara smile. Then suddenly, the wedding coordinator rushed inside excitedly. "It's time." Amara's heart nearly stopped. Outside, hundreds of guests sat beneath beautiful floral arches while soft music played through the garden. Business leaders, celebrities, politicians, everyone waited eagerly. And at the altar stood Adrian. The moment the music changed, the entire crowd rose to their feet. Adrian turned slowly, then completely forgot how to breathe. Amara walked toward him beneath the sunlight looking breathtakingly beautiful. Everything around him faded instantly. The guests, the cameras, the noise. Nothing existed except her. Tears gathered unexpectedly in Adrian's eyes as she approached. He had faced billion-dollar negotiations without fear. Yet somehow this woman still made his heart feel completely defenseless. When Amara finally reached him, Adrian quietly whispered, "You're beautiful." Fresh tears filled her eyes instantly. "You already said that." "I'll spend the rest of my life saying it." The ceremony began softly. The officiant spoke about love, loyalty, and destiny while guests listened emotionally. Then came the vows. Adrian took Amara's hands gently into his own. His voice remained steady, but emotion filled every word. "You found me during a period when I thought success was enough." He looked directly into her eyes. "But then you showed me kindness without expecting anything back." Amara's tears spilled freely now. "You taught me that love feels safe, warm, real." Adrian's voice softened further. "And I promise to spend the rest of my life protecting the happiness you brought into mine." By now, several guests were crying openly. Then Amara spoke through trembling emotion. "For years, I believed life forgot me," she whispered tearfully. "But somehow, every painful moment led me to you." Adrian's chest tightened painfully. "You gave me a home," she continued softly. "Not because of your money, but because you loved me when I felt impossible to love." Adrian shook his head slightly. "Impossible? Never." When the officiant finally pronounced them husband and wife, applause exploded through the garden. Adrian immediately pulled her into his arms while laughter and cheers surrounded them. Then he kissed her gently beneath the golden evening sunlight. And in that beautiful moment, the homeless girl under the bridge officially became Mrs. Amara Cole. The first morning Amara woke up as Mrs. Amara Cole felt surreal. Soft sunlight spilled through the enormous bedroom windows while white curtains moved gently in the cool morning breeze. For a few quiet seconds, she simply lay there staring at the unfamiliar luxury surrounding her. The massive bed, the elegant chandelier overhead, the peaceful silence of the mansion. Everything still felt like a dream she was afraid to touch too hard. Then she felt movement beside her. Strong arms wrapped slowly around her waist from behind. "Why are you awake so early?" Adrian's sleepy voice murmured against her shoulder. Amara smiled softly. "I'm still not used to all this." Adrian opened one eye lazily. "To marriage. To waking up in a mansion." That made him laugh quietly. "You'll adjust." Amara turned slightly toward him. His hair was messy from sleep, and for once he looked less like the intimidating billionaire CEO feared by business rivals and more like a normal man. A very handsome normal man. Adrian noticed her staring. "What?" "Nothing." "You're smiling at me suspiciously." She laughed softly. Adrian pulled her closer against his chest. "Well, whatever it is, continue later. I'm sleeping." Amara shook her head with amusement. How can someone this rich be this lazy in the morning? I became rich so I could be lazy comfortably. She burst into laughter again. And just like that, the nervousness she felt about married life eased slightly. Because despite his wealth and power, Adrian still felt like home. Unfortunately, outside the mansion walls, life became far more difficult. The media attention after the wedding became overwhelming almost immediately. Everywhere Amara went, cameras followed. Reporters waited outside restaurants. Bloggers analyzed her clothing. Television hosts discussed her background endlessly. One afternoon, while scrolling online during lunch, Amara stumbled across another cruel interview. A wealthy socialite smirked confidently during the program. "Let's be honest," the woman said. "A homeless girl can never truly fit into elite society." Amara quietly turned off the television. But the words lingered painfully inside her chest. That evening, Adrian found her unusually silent during dinner. "You're thinking too loudly again," he observed calmly. Amara looked down at her plate. "Do you ever regret marrying me?" The question shocked him instantly. Adrian set down his fork slowly. "Where did that come from? Just answer me." His expression softened completely. "Not even once. But everyone thinks." "I don't care what everyone thinks." Amara sighed quietly. "You say that easily because you belong in this world." Adrian stared at her for a moment before speaking carefully. "Do you know why people keep attacking you?" She frowned slightly. "Because you changed the story they believe about power and money." Amara looked confused. Adrian leaned back slightly in his chair. "People are comfortable believing wealthy men only marry women from wealthy families." His eyes remained steady on hers. "You remind them love doesn't work that way." Silence settled briefly. Then Adrian added quietly, "And honestly, that scares them." Something about those words eased the ache inside her chest slightly. Still, learning to exist in Adrian's world remained difficult. A few weeks later, Amara attended her first major business gala as Adrian's wife. The event took place inside one of the most luxurious hotels in Lagos. Crystal lights sparkled above enormous marble floors, while wealthy guests moved elegantly through the ballroom dressed in designer suits and expensive gowns. Amara felt nervous the moment they arrived. Her dark blue dress looked beautiful, yet she still felt like everyone could somehow see the homeless girl she used to be. Adrian immediately noticed the tension in her body. Without a word, he gently took her hand. "You're squeezing my fingers." "Sorry." "Don't apologize." His thumb brushed softly across her knuckles. "You look beautiful tonight." Amara smiled faintly. The moment they entered the ballroom together, cameras flashed wildly around them. Whispers immediately followed. "That's her. She's prettier in person." "I still can't believe Adrian married her." Amara tried focusing on Adrian instead of the stairs. For a while, things went smoothly. Several guests greeted them politely. Some genuinely welcomed her warmly. Others smiled too perfectly. Then trouble arrived. A wealthy older woman approached their table holding a glass of champagne. Her smile looked pleasant, but her eyes didn't. "Mrs. Cole," she said smoothly, "we've heard so much about you." Amara smiled politely. "It's nice to meet you." The woman tilted her head slightly. "You've adjusted remarkably fast considering your unusual background." Adrian's jaw tightened immediately. Amara forced herself to remain calm. "I'm still learning." "Oh, of course." The woman laughed lightly. "Elite society can be difficult for outsiders." Adrian finally spoke coldly. "She's not an outsider." The woman looked mildly uncomfortable. "I didn't mean anything insulting." "Yes," Adrian replied calmly. "You did." The atmosphere around the table immediately became tense. Several nearby guests pretended not to listen while clearly listening to everything. The woman gave an awkward smile before walking away quickly. Amara released a slow breath. "You don't have to fight everyone for me." Adrian looked genuinely confused. "I wasn't fighting. You terrified that woman." "She'll recover." Despite herself, Amara laughed softly. Adrian's expression relaxed instantly hearing the sound. "Better. A little." He leaned closer slightly. Good. Because we're leaving early. Her eyes widened. What about the event? I'm bored. You've been here 20 minutes. Exactly. Amara shook her head with amusement. You're unbelievable. And yet you married me anyway. As months passed, Amara slowly began finding confidence in her new role. Instead of trying desperately to fit into elite society, she focused on something far more important to her, helping people like the woman she used to be. One morning during breakfast, Amara quietly placed several papers before Adrian. He looked down curiously. What's this? A proposal. I want to open shelters. Adrian immediately looked interested. Amara's eyes softened as she explained. There are so many homeless women in Lagos. Her voice became quieter. Women with children, girls escaping abuse, people nobody notices. Adrian listened carefully. I know what it feels like to sleep outside wondering if anyone cares whether you survive. She looked down briefly. I don't want other people to feel that alone. Something emotional flickered inside Adrian's chest. This was exactly why he loved her. Even after everything she suffered, her first instinct remained helping others. How many shelters? He asked calmly. Amara blinked. You're agreeing already? I was never going to say no. She smiled softly. Adrian reached for the proposal papers. We'll do it properly. Over the next several months, the Amara Hope Foundation officially launched across Lagos. The organization provided shelter, food, job training, and medical support for struggling women and homeless families. And unexpectedly, the public began falling in love with Amara. Not because she married a billionaire, but because she genuinely cared. Television interviews showed her sitting comfortably beside homeless women sharing meals. She personally visited shelters instead of simply donating money. She listened to people, hugged people, remembered names, and slowly public opinion began changing. She's actually kind. She understands suffering. She never acts superior. Even some of her harshest critics reluctantly admitted the truth. Amara Cole had a good heart. One rainy afternoon, Amara visited one of the shelters under construction near the outskirts of Lagos. The building smelled of fresh paint while workers moved supplies around busily. As she walked through the rooms, memories returned painfully. The cold nights beneath the bridge, the hunger, the loneliness. Her chest tightened emotionally. Then suddenly, she noticed a small girl sitting quietly near the entrance holding a torn backpack. The child looked frightened. Amara immediately approached her gently. Hello. The little girl looked up nervously. Are you hungry? The child nodded slowly. Without hesitation, Amara knelt beside her. What's your name? Chioma. Where's your mother? The girl's eyes filled with tears. She died. Pain stabbed sharply through Amara's heart. Very slowly, she opened her arms. After a brief hesitation, the little girl hugged her tightly. Amara closed her eyes emotionally while holding the trembling child close. And suddenly, she remembered herself at 18. Lost, terrified, alone. At that exact moment, she silently promised herself something. No child who entered her shelters would ever feel forgotten again. That evening, Adrian arrived home unusually exhausted after several difficult business meetings. He loosened his tie while walking into the living room, then stopped immediately. Amara sat asleep on the couch surrounded by foundation paperwork. Several charity reports rested across her lap while a laptop remained open nearby. Adrian stared at her quietly. Even exhausted, she had spent her entire day helping strangers. His chest tightened with overwhelming affection. Carefully, he removed the papers from her lap before lifting her gently into his arms. Amara stirred sleepily. Adrian, you fell asleep working again. She blinked tiredly against his shoulder. There's still more to do. You need rest. But the shelter opening is next week. And the world will survive if you sleep. Amara smiled weakly while resting her head against his chest. The steady sound of his heartbeat calmed her instantly. You know something? She murmured sleepily. What? I'm happy. Adrian paused briefly. then kissed her forehead softly. "Good," he whispered, because nothing mattered more to him than that. A week later, the first Amara Hope Shelter officially opened. Dozens of struggling women and children filled the building with tears of relief and gratitude. Television crews arrived to cover the event. During her speech, Amara stood before the crowd holding the microphone carefully. For a moment, emotion overwhelmed her completely, because years ago, she had once been exactly like the people standing before her now. Alone, invisible, forgotten. "I know what it feels like to have nowhere to go," she said softly into the microphone. The room fell completely silent. "I know what it feels like to wonder if your life matters." Several women in the crowd began crying quietly. Amara glanced briefly toward Adrian standing nearby. He looked at her with so much pride it nearly stole her breath. Then she continued, "But I also know one act of kindness can change a person's entire future." Her voice shook slightly. "So this place exists to remind people they are not forgotten." Applause filled the shelter loudly. And for the first time since entering Adrian's world, Amara no longer felt like she was simply surviving inside it. She finally felt like she belonged. Not because of wealth, not because of status, but because she had discovered her purpose. And standing beside Adrian afterward while children laughed around them, Amara realized something beautiful. The girl beneath the bridge had not disappeared. She had simply grown strong enough to help others find their way home too. 2 years passed more beautifully than Amara ever imagined possible. The lonely homeless girl who once slept beneath a bridge now woke each morning beside the man she loved in a home filled with warmth, laughter, and peace. And somehow, Adrian still looked at her like she was the greatest thing that had ever happened to him. Life after marriage settled into a rhythm neither of them wanted to escape. Every morning, Adrian drank coffee while pretending to read business reports as Amara moved around the kitchen humming softly. Every evening, no matter how busy work became, Adrian always returned home for dinner. Always. It became a rule he never broke. "Mr. Cole, the investors are requesting another meeting tonight." "No. They said it's urgent." Adrian calmly closed his laptop. "My wife made jollof rice." David blinked slowly. "Sir." "Exactly." At first, the company executives found his behavior shocking. The once cold billionaire CEO now canceled meetings to attend charity events with his wife. He smiled more, worked less aggressively. Even employees noticed the difference. "He looks happier. He actually says good morning now." I think marriage healed him. Honestly, they were right. Amara had changed Adrian in ways even he barely understood. And she loved every version of him. Even the stubborn, dramatic ones. Especially those. One rainy evening, Amara sat curled against Adrian on the living room couch, while soft jazz music played quietly in the background. She had been strangely emotional all week. Everything irritated her lately. Commercials made her cry. One of the shelter dogs sneezed earlier and somehow that nearly broke her heart. Adrian noticed everything immediately. "You cried because the bread burned yesterday." It was a very emotional loaf. Adrian stared at her. "You're becoming strange." Amara narrowed her eyes suspiciously. "You're rude. You threatened the toaster." It started the fight first. That finally made Adrian laugh. A real deep laugh that filled the room warmly. Amara smiled softly while resting her head against his shoulder. God, she loved this man so much. Then suddenly her stomach twisted painfully. Amara immediately sat upright. "What's wrong?" Adrian asked quickly. She covered her mouth. "I think I'm going to." Amara barely made it to the bathroom before getting sick. Adrian followed immediately, concern filling his face. "Should I call a doctor?" Amara groaned dramatically. "If you call a doctor because I vomited once, I'll divorce you." "That seems extreme." "You're dramatic. You married me willingly." Despite feeling miserable, she laughed weakly. But later that night, after Adrian finally fell asleep beside her, Amara quietly stared at the ceiling deep in thought. Because suddenly, possibility entered her mind. One that made her heart begin pounding wildly. The next morning, Amara stood nervously inside a pharmacy wearing sunglasses and a scarf despite nobody recognizing her anyway. She stared at the pregnancy tests on the shelf with complete panic. "Oh God!" she whispered to herself. The cashier smiled knowingly. Amara wanted the ground to swallow her whole. 20 minutes later, she sat alone inside the mansion bathroom staring at the tiny plastic test in her trembling hands. Her entire body felt frozen. Then slowly, 2 pink lines appeared. Amara stopped breathing. For several seconds, she simply stared. Pregnant. She was pregnant. A laugh escaped her lips suddenly. Then tears. Then another laugh. Oh my God! Her hands shook violently as emotions overwhelmed her completely. After everything life had taken from her, after all the years of loneliness and pain, she was going to have a family of her own. A soft sob escaped her throat, and immediately, she thought of her parents. How badly she wished they could see her now. The frightened orphan girl they left behind had somehow found love, safety, happiness, and now, a child. Fresh tears rolled down her cheeks as she pressed a trembling hand against her stomach. Then panic suddenly hit. How was she supposed to tell Adrian? The entire day, Amara acted suspiciously. Very suspiciously. Adrian noticed immediately. At dinner, she nearly dropped a glass after zoning out completely. "You've stared at that spoon for 5 minutes." Amara blinked rapidly. "What? You're behaving like a criminal." "I'm not behaving like a criminal. You hid snacks in your purse earlier. That proves nothing." Adrian narrowed his eyes slightly. Something was definitely happening. Later that evening, he found her pacing nervously inside the bedroom. "Amara." She turned too quickly. "Yes. What's wrong?" "Nothing. You're lying." "No, I'm not." "You reorganized the bookshelf alphabetically." Adrian crossed his arms calmly. "You only do that when stressed." Amara froze. "How do you even know that?" "I pay attention to my wife." The simple answer melted her slightly. Still nervous, she took a slow breath. "Okay." She swallowed hard. "Sit down." Adrian immediately looked concerned. "Why does that sound terrifying?" "Just sit." Slowly, Adrian sat at the edge of the bed while watching her carefully. Amara's heart hammered wildly inside her chest. Then finally, she walked toward him and gently placed the pregnancy test in his hand. At first, Adrian frowned in confusion. Then realization hit him. His eyes widened instantly. Silence. Complete silence. Amara's nerves exploded immediately. "Say something." Adrian looked up slowly. "You're pregnant." Her eyes filled with nervous tears. "Yes." For one long second, Adrian simply stared at her. Then suddenly, he stood so fast the pregnancy test nearly flew across the room. "Are you serious?" Amara burst into emotional laughter. "Yes." Adrian ran both hands through his hair in complete shock. "You're serious?" "Yes." A disbelieving laugh escaped him. Then another. And suddenly Adrian pulled her into his arms so quickly she squealed. "Oh my God!" he whispered against her hair. Amara started crying immediately. Adrian pulled back slightly to look at her face. "You're crying. You're shaking." "I'm not shaking." "You're definitely shaking." Adrian looked down at his trembling hands. "Okay, maybe slightly." Amara laughed through her tears while Adrian stared at her like he could barely process reality. "We're having a baby?" The wonder in his voice shattered her heart completely. "Yes." Adrian closed his eyes briefly before hugging her tightly again. And for the first time in years, the billionaire who once believed he needed nobody cried quietly from happiness. Evelyn nearly fainted when they told her the news. "My baby is having a baby." Amara laughed while Adrian rubbed his forehead tiredly. "Mother, please stop screaming." "I will not." She immediately pulled Amara into a crushing hug. "Oh, my precious girl." Then she turned dramatically toward Adrian. "You better take care of her properly." "I already do." "Not enough." Adrian looked offended. Meanwhile, David nearly choked during a business meeting after Adrian casually announced the news. "You're smiling during financial reports?" David whispered suspiciously. I'm going to be a father, right? Forgot you're emotional now. Adrian ignored him completely. Honestly, the pregnancy changed him almost instantly. He became overprotective. Ridiculously overprotective. Don't carry that. Adrian, it's literally a pillow. You could strain something. From breathing. Yes. At one point, he even tried following Amara around the shelter openings constantly until she finally threatened him. If you ask whether I'm tired one more time, I'll scream. I'm just making sure you're okay. I am okay. Are you sure? Amara stared at him. Adrian looked completely serious. She burst into helpless laughter. Months passed peacefully. Amara's pregnancy became the center of the entire family's happiness. The media celebrated constantly. Even the public seemed genuinely excited. People who once criticized Amara now admired how grounded and kind she remained despite wealth. And through everything, Adrian stayed beside her. Every doctor appointment, every late-night craving, every emotional breakdown. One night at 2 a.m., Amara suddenly woke him urgently. Adrian. Half asleep, he immediately sat upright. What happened? I need puff puff. Silence. Now? Yes. At 2 in the morning? Her lower lip trembled slightly. Adrian immediately grabbed his car keys. Say less. Amara watched him rush downstairs while trying not to laugh. God, this man would probably fight the moon itself if she requested it politely enough. One afternoon during a routine ultrasound appointment, the doctor suddenly smiled strangely. Well, she said carefully, there's something important you should know. Adrian instantly looked alarmed. What's wrong? Nothing is wrong. The doctor laughed softly. Actually, everything is wonderful. Amara frowned slightly. Then the doctor turned the screen gently toward them. You're having twins. Silence. Adrian blinked once, then twice. Twins. Amara burst into shocked laughter immediately. Oh my God. The doctor smiled warmly. 2 healthy baby girls. Adrian looked genuinely speechless for perhaps the first time in his entire life. 2. Yes. Amara laughed harder at his expression. You look terrified. I was emotionally prepared for one tiny human. She grabbed his hand gently. We can handle 2. Adrian looked at the ultrasound screen again. 2 little lives. 2 daughters. His daughters. Something overwhelming filled his chest instantly. Love. Protectiveness. Wonder. And suddenly he realized something terrifying. He would destroy the entire world for these children if necessary. The closer Amara came to giving birth, the more anxious Adrian became. He barely slept. He read parenting books aggressively. He interviewed pediatricians like job candidates. At one point, David walked into Adrian's office and found him staring intensely at baby stroller reviews. Sir, this one has stronger wheel suspension. David blinked slowly. You manage billion-dollar companies. And now I'm managing future tiny people. Honestly, fatherhood suited Adrian beautifully, even before the babies arrived. Then finally, one stormy night, Amara went into labor. Chaos exploded instantly. Adrian panicked so badly he grabbed the wrong hospital bag twice. Breathe! Amara laughed painfully between contractions. You breathe. I am breathing. Not correctly. Even through the pain, she nearly laughed again. Hours later, inside the hospital room, Adrian held Amara's hand tightly while she struggled through labor. You're doing amazing, he whispered repeatedly. Amara squeezed his hand hard enough to nearly break it. You did this to me. That's fair. Several exhausting hours later, the room suddenly filled with the sound of crying babies. Then another cry followed immediately after. 2 tiny, beautiful girls entered the world. Amara burst into emotional tears instantly. Adrian looked completely frozen as the nurses carefully placed the babies into their arms. One daughter slept peacefully against Amara's chest. The other blinked sleepily in Adrian's arms. And just like that, everything changed forever. Adrian stared down at the tiny little girl gripping his finger weakly. His throat tightened painfully. She's so small, he whispered emotionally. Amara smiled tearfully. They're perfect. Adrian looked toward her then, and suddenly the full weight of his life hit him all at once. Years ago, he had been lonely despite having everything money could buy. Now, he had this, a wife he adored, 2 daughters, family, a home filled with love. And for the first time in his life, Adrian Cole truly understood what wealth meant. 5 years later, laughter echoed loudly through the Cole mansion, while 2 little girls raced barefoot across the living room. "Daddy! Daddy! She cheated. I did not." Adrian sat on the couch pretending to read financial reports while secretly losing terribly at a princess board game against his daughters. The powerful billionaire CEO, who once terrified boardrooms, now wore a pink plastic tiara slightly crooked on his head. And honestly, he had never looked happier. "Daddy lost again," little Zara announced proudly. Her twin sister Zena burst into dramatic laughter. "You're very bad at this game." Adrian looked offended. "I own multiple companies." "And still lost," Zara replied confidently. Amara walked into the room carrying a tray of snacks and immediately stopped. Then she laughed so hard she nearly dropped the juice. "Oh my God!" Adrian sighed heavily. "Your daughters are bullies." "Our daughters," Amara corrected smugly. The twins immediately rushed toward her excitedly. "Mama!" Amara bent down carefully to hug them, while both girls spoke over each other at once. "Daddy can't play. He keeps losing. He needs training." Adrian narrowed his eyes. "I suddenly understand why some animals eat their children." The girls gasped dramatically. "Mama!" Amara laughed while sitting beside him on the couch. "You deserve that." Adrian wrapped one arm around her waist automatically. Even after 5 years of marriage, he still touched her constantly. Small touches, protective touches, loving touches, as though some part of him still feared losing her. Amara leaned gently against him while the twins returned to their game nearby. And for one peaceful moment, she simply watched her family quietly, the little girls giggling loudly, Adrian pretending not to smile while secretly watching them with complete adoration. The warm, comfortable home surrounding them. Sometimes it still felt unbelievable, because years ago, she had once believed she would die alone beneath that bridge. Life had changed tremendously for both of them. The Amara Hope Foundation grew far beyond anything Amara imagined possible. Shelters now existed across several states in Nigeria, helping thousands of struggling women and children rebuild their lives. Amara personally visited each shelter regularly despite her busy schedule. And everywhere she went, people loved her. Not because she married a billionaire, but because she never forgot where she came from. One afternoon, Amara visited the very first shelter she opened years earlier. Several women greeted her warmly the moment she arrived. "Mrs. Cole." One young mother rushed forward emotionally carrying a baby girl. "You helped me when I had nowhere to go," the woman said tearfully. "Now I have my own tailoring shop." Amara hugged her tightly. "You did the hard work." "No," the woman whispered emotionally. "You gave me a second chance." Moments like that always humbled Amara deeply, because she understood something many wealthy people never truly understood. Sometimes survival only required one person believing in you. Just one. Later that evening, Amara walked through one of the shelter hallways when she noticed a familiar figure sitting quietly near the entrance. Her breath caught softly. Baba Tund, the elderly homeless man who once shared the bridge with her years ago. He looked healthier now, dressed in clean clothes with brighter eyes. The old man smiled immediately upon seeing her. "I knew you would never forget us." Emotion tightened painfully in Amara's chest. She rushed forward and hugged him carefully. "How are you?" "Alive because of you." Tears filled her eyes instantly. Baba Tund shook his head proudly. "I always knew God would change your life someday." Amara smiled shakily. "Mine too." Meanwhile, Adrian's life transformed in ways nobody expected. The ruthless businessman newspapers once feared had somehow become a devoted family man. And strangely, people respected him more for it. Employees at Cole Enterprises no longer feared approaching him completely. He still remained intimidating during business negotiations, of course. But now there was warmth beneath the sharp edges. One morning during a board meeting, Adrian's phone suddenly buzzed. He glanced down. A photo message from Amara. The twins had apparently covered themselves entirely in flour while attempting to help bake cookies. Adrian stared at the picture for several seconds, then smiled unconsciously. Every executive at the table froze in shock. One poor investor nearly dropped his pen, because Adrian Cole's smiling during financial meetings still felt like witnessing a rare natural disaster. David leaned over casually. The tiny humans strike again? Adrian showed him the picture briefly. David burst into laughter. They look criminal. They are criminal. Still smiling slightly, Adrian immediately typed back, "Don't let them near the kitchen unsupervised again." 3 seconds later Amara replied, "Too late. We lost the sugar container." Adrian rubbed his forehead tiredly. Meeting postponed. The executives blinked in confusion. "Sir, my children declared war on the kitchen." And just like that, the billionaire CEO abandoned a $1 million meeting to go home. David watched him leave with amusement. 5 years ago, Adrian would have called security over spilled flour. Now, he rushed home because his daughters misplaced sugar. Love truly changed people. That evening, the mansion kitchen looked like complete chaos. Flour covered the counters. Cookie dough somehow reached the ceiling. And both twins wore matching guilty expressions. Adrian slowly surveyed the disaster. Silence. The girls hid behind Amara immediately. "Mama said cooking is learning," Zara whispered carefully. Amara looked betrayed. "I absolutely did not say destroy the kitchen." Zena pointed dramatically. "The mixer attacked us first." Adrian closed his eyes briefly. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. A real helpless laugh. Soon Amara joined in. Then the twins. Within minutes, the entire kitchen filled with laughter so loud even the house staff smiled nearby. Eventually, Adrian rolled up his sleeves calmly. "Move aside." Amara blinked. "What are you doing?" "Teaching my daughters how to make proper cookies." The twins cheered loudly. An hour later, the kitchen remained messy. But now warm cookies filled the air with sweet smell, while the girls proudly showed off terribly shaped creations. Amara leaned quietly against the counter watching Adrian help the twins carefully decorate cookies. Her chest tightened softly with emotion, because sometimes she still remembered the lonely man she met years ago. The cold billionaire with tired eyes. And now, look at him, covered in flour while arguing with 5-year-olds about cookie shapes. Life was strange, beautifully strange. That night, after finally putting the twins to sleep, Amara stepped onto the mansion balcony quietly. The city lights glittered beautifully beneath the dark sky while cool wind brushed gently against her skin. A familiar warmth suddenly wrapped around her from behind. "Adrian, you disappeared," he murmured softly. "I wanted air." He rested his chin lightly against her shoulder. For a while, they simply stood together silently, comfortably, peacefully. Then Adrian spoke quietly. "Do you ever think about the bridge?" Amara's eyes softened instantly. "Yes." "Does it hurt?" She considered the question carefully. "Sometimes." Adrian turned her gently toward him. "If you miss anything from that life, I can." Amara immediately laughed softly. "There's nothing to miss." "Good. But..." Her expression became thoughtful. "I think about the girl I used to be." Adrian listened quietly. "She was lonely," Amara whispered. "Scared all the time." Her eyes grew emotional. "Sometimes I wish I could go back and tell her everything would eventually be okay." Something painful tightened inside Adrian's chest. Slowly, he brushed a tear gently from her cheek. "She survived," he said softly. Amara smiled faintly. "Yes. She became extraordinary." The sincerity in his voice nearly broke her heart. Adrian rested his forehead lightly against hers. "You saved my life too, you know?" Amara blinked softly. "What? You think I rescued you?" He smiled quietly. "But before you, I was just existing." Emotion filled her chest completely. "I loved you before I even understood what was happening," Adrian admitted softly. Amara laughed through tears. You were terrible at hiding it. I'm aware. She wrapped her arms gently around his neck. You changed my life. No, Adrian whispered while looking into her eyes. You changed mine. Then softly, lovingly, he kissed her beneath the glowing city lights. And for one peaceful moment, everything felt perfect. A few weeks later, the Cole family attended the opening ceremony for the largest Amara Hope Foundation Center yet. The building was massive, designed to house hundreds of women and children while offering education programs, medical care, and job training. As Amara stood on stage preparing to speak, she looked out across the enormous crowd emotionally. So many faces, so many stories, so many people who once felt forgotten. Behind her stood Adrian holding the twins while Evelyn smiled proudly nearby. The little girls waved excitedly at the crowd. Amara laughed softly before stepping toward the microphone. Years ago, public speaking terrified her. Now she spoke with quiet confidence. Many years ago, she began softly, I slept beneath a bridge believing my life no longer mattered. The crowd fell silent instantly. Amara glanced briefly toward Adrian. He watched her with the exact same love in his eyes as the day he proposed. That night, she continued, I helped a stranger because kindness was the only thing I still had left to give. Tears filled several eyes across the audience. And that one moment changed everything. Her voice trembled slightly with emotion. But this foundation isn't about me. She looked out toward the women and children gathered there. It's about reminding people that no human being is worthless. Thunderous applause filled the building. The twins clapped wildly while Evelyn cried openly nearby. Adrian simply stared at his wife with overwhelming pride. Because somehow, the homeless girl beneath the bridge had become one of the strongest women he had ever known. Later that evening, after the ceremony ended, the family returned home exhausted but happy. The twins fell asleep almost immediately after dinner. Evelyn retired upstairs smiling proudly. And eventually, only Adrian and Amara remained awake. They sat together quietly on the balcony once more while soft wind moved through the night. Amara rested her head gently against Adrian's shoulder. Below them, the city glowed peacefully. You know something? She whispered softly. What? I used to think home was a place. Adrian turned slightly toward her. But it isn't, she continued quietly. Home is the person who stays beside you no matter what. Emotion flickered deeply across Adrian's face. He kissed the top of her head gently. I'm never leaving. Amara smiled softly. I know. Below them, laughter from their daughters echoed faintly through the mansion halls even in their sleep. The home once filled only with silence and loneliness now overflowed with love. And standing there beside the man who chose her when the world overlooked her, Amara realized the greatest truth of all. Sometimes the most beautiful lives begin with the darkest nights. And sometimes, one small act of kindness can change everything forever. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy the story, please subscribe to this channel.